Hey everyone, welcome back to another video. In the last episode, we made some killer progress on Jared's Sport Front XFWD SRT-4. And we reached a hard stopping point, unfortunately, when I determined that this throttle body flange right here was set up for 4-inch tube as opposed to the 3.5-inch tube that I'm building the rest of the cold side intercooler tube out of. So from then until now, I went ahead and I got this, which is a 3.5 to 4-inch transitional cone, as well as his blow-off valve flange. And the only outstanding item that I need to acquire in the process of building this intercooler tube is a 3/8 NPT bung for the intake air temp sensor. But I can get that from Jegs in the next couple of days, and I don't need that to build the rest of the tube. So we're going to start the day off by finishing this cold side intercooler tube. So what I need to do is get this cone fit onto this flange, paying attention to the location of this brake fitting right here. And once I have that done, then I can move forward with building or fitting the last couple of linking pieces between that cone and this section of tube right here. So it's pretty self-explanatory, so let's go ahead and get to it. Jared's new cold side intercooler tube is wrapped up, I guess, aside from the blow-off valve flange, that is. So here is what we ended up with. And everything fits nicely. There's clearance to the strut tower, clearance to the brake line fitting. It slides in and out of place very easily. And the one bit, if you guys paid attention throughout that time lapse, I welded this intercooler tube one joint at a time rather than building the entire thing and then running through all the welds at once. So the reason for that is just in case there was any little bit of movement or deviation from the initial location of each piece of this intercooler tube, I could account for that, or I could account for that with the next piece that would be going in the tube, as opposed to build everything, weld everything, and then have it potentially not fit, and then be tasked with cutting things apart, re-welding, so on and so forth. So the next thing that we need to do is come in and put the blow-off valve on. So I have the flange already coped to fit on 3.5-inch tubing appropriately, and I obviously have Jared's blow-off valve sitting on top of the intercooler here as well. So what I need to do is determine the location of the blow-off valve, and I have all kinds of real estate obviously on this 3.5-inch cold side intercooler tube that I could place it, and I'll figure out what location that I like, punch the hole, weld it on, and aside from the IAT bung, which I need to order, this intercooler tube will be done, and then we can move on to some really cool stuff to finish the video out. Jared's blow-off valve flange is now in place. The hole is cut, it's ported, all the good stuff. Let's take a look at it. So there is where we ended up placing it, and it puts the valve in a nice accessible location. Again, I try to keep in mind the possible serviceability of all these different parts and all the different systems on cars like this. It is a race car. Race cars have been known to blow up from time to time. Obviously, you aim to not have that happen, but if it does, you want it to be as easy to work on as you possibly can. So that's what I'm trying to do for Jared. But that valve is in place, and now we can move on to the fun stuff. So behind me right here, which you guys are probably fairly familiar at this point in time with a Tycon box. That means there are titanium things. And the titanium things that we're working on will be the hood exit exhaust and the 2 hood exit wastegate dump tubes. So this box has all of the materials that I should need to accomplish those tasks. And right now, today, we're going to start on the hood exit exhaust. So it needs to come out of the turbine outlet, which I already have the flange on there for it, the titanium flange. It will loop around. You can see my index finger. Loop around, come up through this pocket that I purposely left right here, and go out of the hood somewhere. The wastegate dump tubes, I think their orientation is going to remain as it is. I'll double check with Jared to make sure that he does like that, but this way the wastegate dump tubes will be as short as they can be. So that means less vibration, less drumming of the tubes around due to the engine harmonics and vibrations that it just will inevitably produce. So these ideally will loop 90 back, straight up, try to keep them as symmetrical as I can, but we'll do that in the next couple of days. Right now we'll just focus on the actual exhaust. So let me get a few of these parts and pieces unbagged, and we can get started with tacking some of this stuff and maybe get to welding in a little bit. got in the zone and didn't film a whole lot of the exhaust fabrication process up to this point, but let's take a look at what I have in the car so far. So it's a little bit difficult to see due to just the amount of stuff here, but we have a 90 out of the turbine outlet to a 45 to a straight to another 90 right there. And it's tight confines, but I'm making everything fit. And it's just a fitment dance back and forth to try to get everything to sit in here the way that it needs to, and yeah, and work the way that Jared and I want it to work. So right now, this straight section that will go on here doesn't quite line up at the bottom. This is obviously just a piece of aluminum I'm using for mock-up, but I will need to make a bit of a miter cut on the next straight section that's coming off of, or the next titanium straight section that will be off of this last 90-degree bend. However, it's late enough here now where I'm going to get out of here for the day, and then tomorrow I can come back in and make more progress on this part. So I'll take the evening to think about it, see if I like what's going on with what we have so far, and if not, then I'll come back in tomorrow, modify, fit everything up, as I really don't want to rush this titanium portion of this project, as second to the header, it really will be the focal piece of this entire turbo setup. So without rambling anymore, I will see you guys tomorrow, and we'll make some more progress on this thing. We're back, and let's make some more progress on Jared's exhaust. So this is where we ended up yesterday. I have everything ran to this point, and I need to determine what the next piece in the sequence of these pieces is going to be. So I suspect it's going to be a piece of straight, but if I put this piece of aluminum in here, and I'm not sure if you guys can see down there or not, yeah, there's quite a gap. So this will end up needing a miter cut on it. So I need to see if I think I have some 4-inch stainless over there. That'll use that as a template, so that way I can cut a miter angle into it, determine the length of straight that I need and the angle and everything else without having to cut into the titanium, as stainless is a little bit easier to replace and a little bit more cost effective to replace than titanium is. So overall, I'm pretty happy with how this exhaust is coming out. There, albeit not a whole lot, but there is clearance the whole way around for it, and I suspect I'll end up putting a threaded boss, another threaded boss on the top of the intercooler, somewhere right around where my middle finger is there, in a tab off of this hood exit exhaust, just to keep everything in place and to keep it a little bit happier when there's actually fireballs and explosions coming out of it. So without rambling anymore, let me go over and get this piece of 4-inch, put a few miter cuts into it at different angles, see what works the best, and before long we'll have a tube running vertically out of this thing. Miter angles on my bandsaw are pretty easy to adjust and accommodate for. So back here, this vice jaw, there is a pivot bolt in here, or the pivot bolt over here rather, and then a set bolt right here, and then there's an angle gauge along here. So simply you go ahead, loosen the pivot bolt, and you can move this vice jaw to pretty much whatever angle that you want. So I'm going to try 7.5 degrees to start, and I'll see if that is the appropriate angle for what I'm trying to do here. If not, then I can make adjustments and alter the angle to whatever it needs to be, but I think 7.5 will be a good starting point, and I can always go more or less if need be. So I have my section of 4-inch stainless right here, and this is an older piece. I've had it around for quite a while, but I'll go ahead, take that, put it in the saw, make the cut, and fingers crossed that it fits appropriately. I did a little bit of playing around with the different pieces that we have here and figured out a better solution and a better routing for Jared's exhaust. So everything from, if you can see in here, let me adjust the camera real quick. There we go. So everything from this straight back this way is the same. However, after that straight, I switched out from that 90-degree bend to a 45. I have a straight coming up here, and I'll have a little bit of an angle on the top side and another little straight section kicking up to wherever we want to take the hole through the hood. However, Jared wants to be present for popping the hole in the hood of this thing, and he wants to put it in exactly the location that he would like. So I'm going to wait until he gets here later today to cut that last angle and fit the last couple of pieces. However, at this point in time, I can go ahead and weld up what we have done already. So everything that's here as far as the exhaust can become one piece, and then we can figure out the rest of it when Jared gets here later. Jared's exhaust is cleaned up on the purge block, purging, and in a few minutes I'll be ready to weld and get these pieces right here made into one piece. So you can hear the gas flowing maybe. And I'll let this purge out for a few minutes just to get all the regular atmospheric air out of it, so that way we get a nice clean backside to the weld to make this part as strong as we can for Jared, as this thing's going to be throwing quite a few fireballs. So like I said, I'll let gas flow for a few minutes, and when I feel that it's purged enough, I'll come in and start melting. The bulk of Jared's exhaust welding is completed. So here's what we ended up with. And I'm very happy with how this came out. The outside has zero color in it. And the inside, let's see, you have a pretty decent back purge. And this thing should hold up for the test of time for what he's going to put it through. So a couple notes about welding titanium. Don't be in a rush. Go slow, go smooth, go short distances. You're working with an exotic material, so take the time to enjoy the process and really slow your process down. That is how you end up with colorless welds. If you have color in them, you outran your shielding gas with the weld bead, and you don't want to do that. Now, for an automotive application, if you have a little bit of color in it, it isn't the end of the world, but it isn't the proper way to weld titanium. You should have colorless or straw-colored welds like what you see here, and that's what a proper titanium weld, the aesthetics of it are. So aim for that, and then, as always, you see I'm gloved up. Be sure to wear gloves when you're handling titanium. Otherwise, the oils from your hands will impregnate themselves in the surface, and as soon as you heat cycle it, then you'll end up with a handprint on your part. Not exactly the most sightly thing. So go slow, glove up, and it really isn't all that bad to weld. So let's go ahead and take this, put it back in the car for right now, and then when Jared comes out later, we can figure out what to do with the actual portion that protrudes through the hood, how he wants it to be shaped, where he wants it to be located, and we can get that squared away and get this exhaust wrapped up. One other thing that I can do while trying to kill time waiting for Jared to make his way out here is put the O2 bung in. So what we have are the bung itself, which is a heatsink O2 bung. I just think they look kind of cool having the ribbing there, and it's similar to like an old air-cooled motorcycle engine or what you'd see in a computer or something along those lines, where rather than just being straight wall, it has these ribs that increase the surface area of it and therefore increase the surface area of, or it increases the ability for it to cool due to the amount of surface area that it has. Now, does it actually make a difference? I don't know. I just think it looks cool, and that's what we're going to use on this. And then right here, we have the O2 bung brace, where I like to use these anytime that I'm putting an O2 bung in thin wall titanium tube. It just increases the surface area that is acting upon the surface of the tube. In case it moves around or anything along those lines, you're less likely to break the tube with increased surface area than if it were just the bung itself. So I need to get my mock-up O2 sensor and figure out a location that it can sit in here. And once I have that, I can mark out where the hole goes, make the hole, and then get all of this welded together. Jared's O2 bung is in place, complete with the gusset panel or the reinforcement panel. So now this can be thrown back in the SRT-4. Jared's actually on his way here right now, so when he gets here, we can figure out exactly where the hole in the hood is going to be for the exhaust and perhaps even the wastegate dump tubes. So let me get this thrown in. When Jared gets here, we can figure out where this is going to come up through the hood, and I can wrap up the rest of the exhaust. All right, I'm gonna set the 45 in there. Pretty good to me. What do you think? Pretty close. Might have to do a little bit of grinding on this 45.
Maybe a little bit of work on the carbon.
Maybe so.
And after it's all said and done.
Yep. I think we have a pretty good starting point there.
I'm digging it.
Good work. How's the lung cancer?
It feels good.
Good.
Feels good.
After probably 30 seconds for you guys and probably an hour or two for old Jared here, there is now a hole in the hood that you guys saw us mocking up how the exhaust is going to run through it, and we have a pretty solid game plan for how that's going to go. So what we'll try to do with the wastegate dump tubes is, if you look from this vantage point, you see the angle and where that hole is placed there. We're going to try to mimic it on this side, obviously just with two smaller tubes for the wastegate dump tubes. But this thing should look pretty wild when everything is said and done there. So I think Jared is done hanging out in Escobar's fiberglass land today.
Yes.
and I'm about ready to get out of here for today as well. So I'll come in tomorrow, get the exhaust wrapped up, and then start looking at the wastegate dump tubes. So I will see you guys then, and we'll keep rolling on this thing. Today, we're going to finish Jared's exhaust. So yesterday, Jared stopped out, and he made the hole here, and everything lines up pretty nicely. And I'll have to do a couple of little tweaks to this 45 that I cut, just to, I call them cheater grinds. What we're going to do is on the inside of the bend on both sides, just have to tweak it a little bit to make that 45 line up with the section of straight that will actually be our protrusion coming out of the hood. So pretty self-explanatory. So let me stop rambling on and let's go ahead and get to it. There we have the tip mocked up on Jared's car. So it has kind of an interesting shape to it, as the way that I mark out to make big miter cuts like this is I'll take the marker, I'll lay it down on the hood, and I'll run it around something like that. But due to the curvature of the hood, it ended up having a pretty interesting shape to it, which I'll check with Jared to see if he likes this. If not, then I'll just have to pull the tip back off, take it over to the belt sander, sand it flat. But I don't know, I think I like it pretty well. We'll see if Jared does. If he does, then we are good to go to actually weld these last two pieces on, last couple of joints, and then the exhaust will be completed at that point. I heard back from Jared about the shape of the tip, and the more that I looked at it and hearing it from him as well, we're going to take this back off. As if you can see right here, it's just taped together for the time being. We're going to take this off and sand this flat. So all the weird shapes and everything else that it's comprised of currently, the more that I looked at it, I wasn't too stoked with it, and Jared said he would prefer to just have it flat as well. So that's what we're going to do. So let me go ahead, get this last section pulled back out, take it over to the belt sander, sand it flat, and we can bring everything back over after I re-prep the edge and re-prep the inside of it, and put it in its place, mark it out, tack it, test fit, weld, so on and so forth, and get this exhaust wrapped up. I am extremely happy that we decided to change the tip style on Jared's exhaust, because that looks pretty incredible in my opinion. So went ahead and flattened this out, re-prepped the inside. Everything is good to go. Surface finish is what I want. Everything's tacked together, and this baby's ready to weld at this point. So let me go ahead and pull this out, take it over to the bench, start a purge, let it push all the oxygen out, get this thing welded up, and then Jared will have a completed exhaust. Jared's titanium hood exit exhaust is completed. Here's what we ended up with. And there still is a little bit of material that needs to be removed from the hood that is represented by this line right here to make this thing fit the hood exactly the way that I want it to. But that looks absolutely killer, and it'll be quite the fireworks show for him as he's sitting staging on anti-lag or no-lift shifting. You know, strain gauge, it's essentially anti-lag going down the track. So a big old fireball shoots out. It's an awesome show, and Jared's going to be pumped to be able to see that as he's making his way down the track at a very high rate of speed. But let me go ahead and put the hood prop in place, and we can see this in a little bit more of its glory that way. Under the hood, here is what we have. So this ended up coming out very nicely, and honestly, it came out better than I thought it was going to in the first place. When I got to this section here, trying to run the tubes up through, figure out the angles and everything, I was a little bit worried that I was going to have to do some kind of wacky stuff to make everything work. But thankfully, taking a step back, detaching, and playing around with the different bends and different angles that I had, I was able to come up with this, and frankly, I like it much more than what my initial plan was. So, pretty self-explanatory, 90, 45 straight, 45 straight, 45 straight. So, pretty easy construction, and these mandrel elbows that Tycon sells are the way to do titanium work. Everybody loves pie cuts, but everybody loves pie cuts until it comes time to weld pie cuts. And then when you're sitting there spending 2 or 3 hours welding the same bend as opposed to 2 welds in a 45-degree bend is welded up, it's just a little bit more effective from a time management standpoint. But this thing looks sweet, and the next thing to do will be the wastegate dump tubes. However, that won't be in this episode. That will probably be in the next one, as I'm about welded out for the day at this point in time. Welded out, fabricated out. I'm ready to get out of the shop. So let's go ahead and wrap this thing up, and we can make more progress with this thing in the not too distant future. So thank you guys as always for tuning in, for watching these projects come together, watching this crazy contraption come together over the past few episodes, and I can't wait to see this thing in all of its finished glory, and especially to hear it when Jared gets it fired up and ready to careen down the drag strip. But we still have a few things to do before it's time for that, and like I said, we'll outline and cover those things in upcoming episodes. So with that being said, that'll be it for this one. So as always, be sure to subscribe, leave a like, leave a comment, and I will see you guys in the next episode.